Okay, and everybody. I actually intended this talk to be for school kids, but looks like I have mostly adults on the call, but that's fine. Uh, I want to thank you for joining. I chose this topic, which is befriending the mind, and the reason I chose the topic is because in our life we are all looking for happiness, and happiness comes when our mind is at peace, right? When the mind is in a peaceful state, then we feel happy. So the question becomes, how do you get mind to that peaceful state? So that's what this talk is about. Normally I would give a talk like this in person, face to face, but this is on Zoom. But what I want to do is keep the lines open, so you are all unmuted. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to keep the talk interactive. So if you have any questions during the talk, please chime in. I may ask you some questions during the talk, so I will appreciate if you can actually participate and have a dialogue going. So that will make it more effective, even though it's on Zoom. So with that, let's get started. I want to start by offering my pranams to my Guru Swami Tattwamayananda. So everything I'm going to cover with you in this talk today are based on teachings that I have learned from him. So everything I'm going to share in the talk today are based on teachings that I've learned from him. So I owe everything to him, only the mistakes are mine. So when you see this imagery that's on the screen, an image of a monkey, the first question I want to ask you is, what words come to your mind when you see an image of a monkey? Can somebody chime in with their thoughts?
Basically, mind goes all over the place. If things.
No, but when you think of a monkey, what do you think?
Oh,
monkey mind.
I think of bananas because that's what
think of
monkeys
bananas.
eat.
Okay, that's a good answer. What else do you think when you see a monkey? I think crazy, restlessness, that's what comes to my mind. Okay, so and that's why I put this picture here. And so the reason the slide says monkey mind is because in Indian scriptures the mind is compared to a monkey. So a monkey is naturally restless. Now you take that restless monkey and you imagine that this monkey has drunk a bottle of alcohol. Okay, so his restlessness will get amplified. Now imagine this same monkey who has drunk a bottle of alcohol is now bitten by a scorpion. So his restlessness will be further amplified. And then now imagine that he's also possessed by ghosts, right? So he will be, the restlessness will be even further amplified. That imagery that you have of a monkey who is that restless is what our mind is like, okay? And so this is not an analogy that I am providing. These are analogies that are given in Indian scriptures. So the question really becomes, how do we control this mind, right? So we want our mind to be our friend, but the truth is mind is not always our friend. Mind can be a guide, a companion, it can be a friend to us, but it can also be an enemy and really be a problem. Let me give you a real example to illustrate this on kind of how the mind obstructs us. So let's say there is a well-wisher who gives you some good advice. It could be that if you're a student, hey, you should be studying hard, or it could be that you should be going to the gym and do some exercises. It could be that you should start meditation, and you say to yourself, yeah, this is good advice, I'm going to implement it. But then when the time comes for you to implement, like when you sit down to implement it, something comes in the way. Your mind begins to play tricks on you. You say, maybe I don't need to do it now. Maybe I can do it tomorrow. Or you may even come up with some other excuses, right? You may come up with other priorities that are important to you. And you may say, you may actually justify why that is not important. So what I'm just sharing with you, this example where a well-wisher gave you a good advice, you wanted to do it because your intellect wanted you to proceed on that path. You're kind of convinced it's the right thing to do, but your mind is not allowing you to do it. So this is a classic conflict between the mind and the intellect, where the intellect wants to go in a certain direction, but the mind is not allowing it to go in that direction. So why does this conflict happen? Let's actually discuss it. Feel free to interrupt me, by the way, if you have questions along the way. So this conflict happens because of stored tendencies in our mind. I'll explain this. So when you throw a stone in the water, the direct action that you see is of the stone kind of hitting the water and then sinking down, right? But there is a side effect of that, which is the ripples that you see in the water, and the ripples stay there for quite a long time. Similarly, any action that you undertake, any experience that you have in your life has some kind of a direct effect. If you are helping somebody, you may see that, okay, you helped him and that person benefited, but it leaves a residual effect, just like this water ripple, it leaves a residual effect on your mind. And so when you take the sum total of all your experiences and all the residual effects that have kind of sat in your mind, that shapes how you act and behave, right? Because these are the stored tendencies in your mind, and depending on what kind of food you gave to your mind, right, good food or bad food, those stored tendencies will make you act and behave in a certain way. So when your mind is not cooperating with your intellect, is because the stored tendencies in your mind are not complying with what your intellect is asking you to do, right? So the question then really is, okay, how do you turn this mind into a friend? How do you address this type of a conflict that can exist between the mind and the intellect? And before I actually go into deeper into how you yourself could be thinking about it, I want to share my own journey on this front, because that may help you relate to it a little bit. So my journey on this front actually started about four and a half years ago, and it actually was triggered by the loss of a loved one. And when I came back to the US after performing last rites, what I found was that I had very high anxiety. I actually woke up one night and I felt my heart palpitating, my pulse rate was high. I normally play tennis or go on hikes. I could not do those activities anymore just because of that anxiety level. I went to see a doctor, and the doctor basically said, hey, you have anxiety, you should take anxiety medications. And he asked me to take half a tablet for a few days. And I could not survive that medication for more than 2 days, because I just did not have concentration at all if I stayed on that medication. So I was looking for answers, but I did not have any. And magically what happened was, in those days there was a newsletter in Saratoga that used to come to my home, but I never read it. But during that time I read it, and I found there was a class on meditation that was being offered in Saratoga. It was a free class, so I said, let me go try this thing. And so I started meditating, and that helped me. So, and I stayed on that path for a few months. But about 4 months into my meditations, I started having headaches. And I did not have a good answer for why I was having headaches in my meditation. I also started asking questions to myself that, hey, why am I meditating? Was it just to address that anxiety level, or is there a higher purpose to meditation? And those answers ultimately, because I was not getting the direct answers, what happened was I came across a few books on our Indian scriptures, and I found them very interesting on how they talked about the mind and how it operates. I then came across a lecture series on Vedanta by a Swami, which I found quite interesting as well. And I decided to track down that Swami. And I got on a phone call with him, and he pointed me to a few books. But ultimately he said, hey, you are talking to me, I'm in Southern California, but you have a Vedanta temple next to you. There is a very learned Swami right there. Why don't you connect with him? And that's how I met my guru, whose picture I showed you earlier. And then when I met him, he asked me to read certain books to purify my mind first, and then he instructed me on the meditation path. So I've been meditating twice a day since then, and it's been hugely beneficial to me. I'm happy to answer questions you may have on that front. But that is my journey. And if there is one takeaway that you should have from my journey, it is that it's not enough to be physically healthy. You need to be physically healthy and you need to also be mentally healthy. That's when you are happy as a human, or you can say I'm healthy as a human, right? And what constitutes physical health, right? So you would say that, hey, I'm physically healthy when my body is not complaining, right? If your stomach is not well, it's going to complain. It's going to complain through a stomach ache. If you have a sore in your mouth, it will complain every time you eat food. It will remind you of its presence. But if the body is healthy, if your stomach is fine, or if you don't have a sore in your mouth, they will not remind you of their existence. You will just forget it. So it's a similar thing with the mind. When the mind is healthy, you can almost forget it. It's not going to remind you of its existence, right? You're not going to worry or feel guilt or be angry. Like, these are things, these are states of the mind. Uh, but but you want to be there, but the mind is not always in that state, right? So the truth is, our mind swings like a pendulum. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're unhappy, and it can happen very quickly. I'll give you one example. Let's say if you are a 49ers fan and you were watching the last Super Bowl, at the end of the third quarter, you were likely in a very happy state because 49ers were leading 20-10. But one quarter later, we had lost the game and you were probably unhappy. So that's just a very simple example from sports. But we sometimes worry. We sometimes worry about the future, right? Instead of staying 100% focused on the present, we may have guilt about something that we may have done in the past, even though we know that I cannot go change the past. We may also uh, we may get angry when our desires are not fulfilled, right? So these are all examples where your mind is not healthy. It is reminding yourself, it's reminding you of its existence in some ways, right? So how do you get the mind to not complain? Actually, let me pause here for a second in case you have questions, because now I'm going to cover some uh, some ways and mechanisms of how the mind can be made healthy. Okay, if there are no questions, let me continue. So the question I posed is, so how do you prevent the mind from complaining, right? So if you really think hard about it, what you'll find is most of our issues with respect to mental health are because we assign permanence to things that are inherently impermanent. We falsely, like, even though we know that everything in the world changes, we falsely convince ourselves of the permanence of these things, right? So for example, when we are happy, we want that happy state to continue forever. An example could be, you might be in a good job, and then we say, then we think that good job and that success is going to continue forever. And I can speak from my own experience that not everything is in your control in your job, right? Your boss may leave, there could be organizational changes, and you can suddenly find that job that you thought was in a very steady, happy situation is not there anymore. So if you set yourself up with the expectation that, hey, this happy state with the job is going to continue forever, then when a bad situation occurs, you are actually setting yourself up for unhappiness at that point. Now, the reverse is also true on this impermanent scenario. Let's say you are out of a job and you are doing a job search and things are not going well. Now, after you do the job search for a while and if things are not going well, one way you may think is, you may say, oh my God, will I ever get a job? So that statement in your mind, will I ever get a job, is like assigning permanence to a situation that is not necessarily permanent, right? I'll take another example from construction project. We ourselves took on a construction project a couple of years ago. And as with most construction projects, things get delayed, there are cost overruns. And then the thought that comes to your mind is, will my house ever get built? Will this ever get done, right? So that's almost, the anxiety kicks in because we are thinking as if it's a permanent situation. So once we accept things in life as inherently impermanent, then that allows us to begin to get a grip on things, right? So that's one, this intellectual knowledge that things are inherently impermanent and they will change will allow you to get a grip on your mind. What else can we do to get to stop the mind from complaining? So what you have to do is you have to link your mind to something that is higher than the mind, right? So let's say if you're a patient, then you go to somebody who is higher than the patient, like a doctor treats the patient, or a teacher teaches a student, or a driver drives a car, right? So these are situations where somebody who is higher than the other entity is actually doing the treatment. So it's a similar thing with the mind. If you want to make your mind healthy or happy, you have to link it to a higher healthy channel. But the problem is we are not able to control what thought comes into our mind, right? Because you must have noticed that when you actually want to stop your mind from doing something, it will actually do exactly what you are asking it not to do, right? So let me take an example for the school students who are there on this Zoom call. Let's say you have a crush on somebody else, and you're consumed with that person's thought, and you have tests coming up, and so you say, hey, I want my mind to stop thinking about it. For a moment you say that to yourself, and then you close your eyes, and then when you close your eyes, the very first image that shows up is that person's image whom you are trying to forget, and the thought that I'm not going to think about him is the thought that will show up in your mind. Okay, so because the mind is so difficult to control, and because you cannot really dictate to it what it should do next, how do you control the mind? What you have to do is you have to give it another task to do, right? Something that is healthier task. If you give it, then and if you link it to that healthier channel, then you are gradually giving it the right direction. So this is what is being illustrated on this slide here. Let's say there is a person who is trying to move away from the West. Then all he has to do is he has to start walking towards the East. The more he walks towards the East, the farther he is away from the West. So it is in a similar way, the more you connect your mind to some other healthy channel, the less it will be thinking or acting along the things that you wanted it to stop doing, right? But just telling the mind to stop doing those things is not going to work. You actually have to give it a higher healthy direction, right? You have to connect the mind to something higher. Now the question is, what do you connect the mind to? Like, what is higher than the mind? And for that, we need to have a better understanding of who we truly are. And I'll try to make it as simple as I can. So this analogy is actually taken from one of our Upanishads. And when I share this analogy, imagine that you are in the early 1900s, okay? And you imagine that you own a chariot. You are the master of the chariot. And as you can see in this picture, there is a charioteer who is driving the chariot. He has reins in his hand with which he controls the horses, and that's how the chariot moves. And so when you have a destination to go to as the master, you come in, you sit in the chariot, you tell the charioteer where you want to go to, and then using the reins, he drives the chariot forward. Okay. Now let's map this chariot to a human body, like just like there is a journey on the chariot. Assume that there is a journey you are taking in life, right, through a human body, and imagine that the horses represent your five senses, your senses of seeing, your senses of hearing, senses of smell, sense of touch, and sense of taste. And the reins represent your mind. The charioteer represents your intelligence, your intellect. Okay. Now, would you, just like if I go back to the chariot example, you would not let the horses just go on their own in any direction. You have a destination to go to, and the charioteer is actually actively managing and driving the chariot so that it gets to that destination. Similarly, if you compare this to a human body, you would not let the senses just go in any direction that they want. You would ideally want the senses to be controlled by the mind, and for the mind then to be in control by whatever is on the left side of the chariot, right? That is the natural way in which things can work so that you can actually get to where you want to go. But what tends to happen is we let our senses drive the mind. So going back to the question that I posed in the previous slide, I said, hey, you need to give your mind a healthy direction and connect it to something higher and healthy. So what I mean by that is you need to connect your mind to things on the left side of this slide, right? For now, if you just assume that you're connecting it to your intelligence, that is fine, because that will help that will help you move in the right direction. But what I shared on the last slide can seem a little abstract. It seems almost philosophical. So what is a more practical way in which you can, what is a more practical way in which you can implement this, right? So what it turns out is that, as I said in previous examples, our mind is very difficult to dictate what the mind should do. But so you have less control over the mind, but you actually have control over your physical actions. And when you do good physical actions, they actually generate a spiritual energy. And that spiritual energy gives your mind a healthy, uplifting direction. So one thing that you can do is that you can begin to do noble, unselfish deeds, okay? When you do noble, unselfish deeds, then you generate that spiritual energy, and that uplifts your mind. So I want to give you an example here for those of who are students. Hopefully you can relate to this. Let's say you are on your way to school and you're almost running late, and as you get close to your school at an intersection, you see a blind man who is trying to cross the street. Now, you are running late to the school, but you decide to help that person. And so you do so, you help him cross the street, and then you go to the school. But in the process of doing so, you actually are late and you get a tardy slip. The question here that I want to pose to you, and you can unmute yourself and answer, is, at the end of this experience, are you feeling joy inside, or are you worried about that tardy slip?
I kind of have mixed feelings because I don't want to get in trouble, but I still feel good about doing something for another person.
That's a very good answer. And so I want to illustrate this joy a little bit, right? So this joy that you feel when you help this blind person is an inner joy, right? We get joy sometimes which I would call external joy, where you post something on Facebook and then people like it, and then you feel joyful, right? But that joy can disappear very soon, because until like you're posting the next thing, right? And you're also worried, like, are people going to like it, not like it? This joy is not dependent on that external gratification. You sit by yourself in that classroom and you think about the help that you provided to this blind person, and you feel that joy. You may even have goosebumps thinking about it. It's kind of an inner contentment, right? So that is the kind of joy that everybody is looking for. When you get that joy when you feed the homeless. I'll give you, I know you will probably laugh at the example that I'm going to give, but try this at your home. Next time when you are in your kitchen at your home and you see the sink in the kitchen full of dishes, you can either wait for your mom and dad to like do the dishes, or you can just quietly do it, and then just go sit on the sofa and watch the face of your parents and silently enjoy it, and you will get a joy out of it. And that, in this particular case, the joy is coming in again because what you did, gives a little bit of a happiness to your parents, and that in turn gives you happiness. So even though you feel you have actually helped your parents, the real beneficiary is you, because you are the one who is getting joy out of it, right? So these type of unselfish activities which do not have any tangible benefit that you can see, but there is an intangible benefit in the form of that inner joy, is one way in which you can give your mind a healthy direction. So when you do these type of noble activities, what happens is your mind begins to become your friend. Remember, I talked about these ripple effects. Now you are creating different types of residual effects in your mind, which is slowly turning it into your friend. Yeah, you're now giving it a healthy direction. Uh, and you feel that inner contentment. Inner contentment is a definitive sign that mind is your friend. And for those of you who know Hindi, I'm going to use the Hindi word santosha. So inner contentment is basically santosha. And when you have inner contentment, you actually don't look for something more. You feel contented with what you have got. You don't find yourself like looking for something else all the time. In a way, you stop looking for happiness. Many times we are unhappy because we are always looking for something additional to become happy. But when you feel contentment inside, then you don't have to look for that anymore. And when you stop looking for happiness, when you do noble deeds that are unselfish in nature, which makes others happy, all of those things will actually make you truly happy, right? So that's again, let me pause here and see if you have any questions before I go to my next slide. Okay, so one question that you may raise at this point is, you may say, Yogesh, all that is good, but we live in the real world. Like many of you are students, many of you are professionals, and you may say that I have to live in the real world and I have to work towards success. And what you have just shared, that like that doesn't really give me a formula for how I should live my life on a day-to-day basis. So what should you do? So what you need to do is you need to redefine, first of all, what success means, right? It's not enough to be successful. You need to be able to be successful and be able to enjoy the fruits of that success. Many times people are successful, but they still have sleepless nights. They have to take a pill to sleep properly. So that kind of success has less meaning. So what this slide is actually talking about is a concept called Rajarshi, which is from Gita. Rajarshi is a combination of two things. It's a combination of Raja and Rishi, which is a king and a saint combined together. So as a king, you should work with full dedication, efficiency, leadership skills. If you're a student, study hard, earn a lot of wealth, do all of that, right? It's important for you to have that success. But what you do is you combine that with the farsightedness or the common sense of a saint or a sage. What is that common sense? You understand the limitations of success. You understand that empirical success by itself is not good enough. You understand that it could be impermanent. And so with that knowledge, you will actually use your powers and your energy more effectively. So that is what I mean by redefining what success would mean, and bringing in those qualities together as you work in the real world. So this is
question,
go ahead,
Yogesh.
go ahead. Yes,
I'm here with my two kids, and thank you for this dishes analogy. That was very nice.
which analogy?
So the dishes in the sink.
Oh, dishes. Yes, dishes in the sink.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was very nice. So the thing is that many times I think the feeling that is coming between my kids is, why didn't the other one do it?
Yeah.
It's if the other one did it, I would have more joy because the work got done and so I didn't have to do it. So how do you control those kind of feelings?
Yeah. So the first thing, because this is a spiritual talk, the first thing I'll say is spiritual journey is your own journey. Just like when you go to school and when you write a math exam or you write a science exam, It's you who have to write the exam. Similarly, this progress is your own progress. So when your brother does the dishes, it did not help you in your spiritual progress or in you achieving inner contentment in any way, right? So if you selfishly care about your own contentment, you should do it. The way you should think about it is, my parents are actually giving me an opportunity to serve themselves. How nice of them that I'm being given this opportunity to progress further in this path. Just like when you go to a school and you learn science and other things, you progress. This is an opportunity that somebody is giving. That's why in Hindu tradition, we actually talk about a guest as God. When a guest comes to your home, he is giving you an opportunity to serve him, so that you can progress spiritually. You are the real beneficiary, not him.
So thank you.
Thank you. Now, remember the talk was about befriending the mind and how to achieve inner contentment. I've covered all that. I want to now go back to this issue of linking the mind to something higher. Even though I touched on it a little bit, I want to use my next few slides not to quite fully answer this question, but I at least want to generate enough curiosity in your mind so you can think about it after you leave this talk. So the question is, who is this master who is sitting on the chariot? Right? I said that, hey, you are the master, you have a chariot, and then I gave the analogy to a human life. But how do you relate that in your own life? So we're going to try to answer that question so you can relate more to who to link your mind to. And I'm going to start that by asking all of you guys to do a small exercise with me. Even though I cannot see you guys, hopefully you'll be honest with me as you answer my questions. So, you know, when you go play tennis, first of all, your tennis coach, let's say you hit a backhand shot, he will say at the end of your shot, hold it so that he can see your position. Similarly, I'm going to ask you to point to something, but after you are pointed there, I want you to hold that position so that when I ask you a question later, you guys can meaningfully answer. So if you guys are ready, what I want you to do is I want you to point to yourself and say, mentally say, this is me. I'm going to do it too. So I want you to watch yourself and see where you are pointing to. Can some of you answer on the line and tell me where you are pointing to within your body?
My heart.
Okay, so I'm pointing to my heart as well. In fact, the majority of you would be pointing to your heart. And if you notice, if you can see me on the video, my heart is actually here. My physical heart is here, but most of us are probably pointing here in the center of your chest, which is your spiritual heart. Now, so the question is, why are so many of us pointing here? So again, as I said, I'm only going to arouse your curiosity, not try to answer it wholly. Is one of the reasons could be that you intuitively know that your true identity is centered here somewhere. You intuitively know, because you did not point when you said this is me. You did not say this is me, or this is me, or this is me, or this is me. You point here because there is some intuition you have, right? Even though, yeah, you may not be thinking about it all the time, but that knowledge is there. But let me drive this point home with a couple more examples. And here is another question I have for you. Let's say you are standing in front of a 3-story building. And so this building has 3 floors. And what you're going to do, on each floor, there is a room. And even though the picture shows multiple rooms. So let's say you actually go to the first floor, you visit the room there. Then you go to the second floor, you visit the room there. And then you go to the third floor and you visit the room there. My question to you is, what do you think is common in this experience? There's no right or wrong answer. Feel free to chime in. I would love some feedback.
Wanting to be on the top floor.
No, the question is, what is common? Meaning, what is the common element in all the three experiences? So so I was expecting answers like, okay, the walls are common, or the building is the same. But what is, if you really think about it, what is common is you. You are the common element because you visited the first floor and the second floor and the third floor. So you are that common entity. Okay, is that clear? If that is clear, then I want to build on this analogy with this example of so when we live our life, we are essentially in one of three states. We are either in a waking state, like just like right now, we are talking to each other, or we are sleeping and in our sleep we are dreaming, or you could be in a deep sleep state. Now, when we are in our waking state, I hope you would all agree with me that everything is active. My mind is active, my senses are active, my organs of actions are active, everything is active. Okay. Now let's go to the dream state. When you are dreaming, what is active? Obviously, the mind is active because it is the one projecting all the images that is making you dream. But your senses and organs of action are not active at that point, right? So is that clear so far between waking and dream state? But now let's actually go to the deep sleep state. When you are in deep sleep state, the way you know about it is you wake up the next morning and you say, I had a great sleep. I was in deep sleep. I was not even dreaming. But you do have memory of that deep sleep because you wake up and you say, hey, I had that deep sleep. So now, just like the three rooms that we visited right in the previous slide, here there is something that is common across all these three states. Okay. Now, obviously, it cannot be your senses and your organs of action because they're not even active in your dream state. It cannot be the mind either because the mind is not active in the deep sleep state. So the question becomes, who is it that was active in all the three states? So whatever that is who you truly are, because that is what is experiencing everything all the time in all these three states. And it's not limited to the mind even, it's beyond the mind. I have one more example to drive this point home. And so in grammar, we know we have this concept of subject and object, right? So let's say with my eyes, I see nature, or I'm looking at this camera. So the object that I am seeing may be of different colors, different shapes, different forms. They could be changing. And so there is multiplicity on the object side. But on a relative level, my eyes, the seer is unchanged. Like there is a seer and seen relationship. And so there is multiplicity on the object side, but the subject is relatively unchanged, which is my eyes. But I could make the eyes the object because you do know the states of your eyes. You know that my eyes are closed, my eyes are open, my eyes are drowsy, my eyes are dry, my eyes are itchy. So who knows those states of the mind, of the states of the eyes, right? So that has to be something higher than the eyes. And you could say that, hey, the subject of that scenario is the mind, and the mind knows what is going on with the eyes. But then you also know the states of the mind. You say, I am happy, I am sad, I am mad, right? So these are all various states of the mind. So obviously there is something higher than the mind that is aware of all these states of the mind, right? So what I've tried to do in the last few slides, remember that that master that I was talking about the chariot, there is a human, and the chariot is like the human body, and there is a master of that body. You are that master and you are not limited to that body. And through these examples, I've tried to show to you why you are higher than that body. You are the witness of your dream state, your deep sleep state, your waking state. You are the witness of your mind. In fact, in mindfulness meditation, they ask you to do meditation by watching your thoughts. What are you essentially doing through that meditation? by watching your thoughts, you are becoming a witness to your own mind, and you are taking yourself closer to an understanding that you are a witness, you are higher than the mind. Right? So with that, I'm going to summarize before I end with a meditation. That what I covered in the talk today is, first thing is, mind is not always our friend, right? There is conflict between mind and intellect, and it's because of stored tendencies. So it's important to turn the mind into a friend, and one way to turn the mind into a friend is you have to think about the kind of food that you give to your own mind. And so I shared some examples of how that can be done. I said, first, if you have intellectual knowledge of the impermanence of things, that will help you turn your mind into a friend. But because you don't have control over what thought comes into your mind next, and because you can control your physical actions, if you can do more unselfish, noble activities that do not have any tangible benefit per se, but have a great joy in an intangible manner, then that will help you turn your mind into a friend. I also talked about how success needs to be redefined. You cannot focus on empirical success alone. You need to train yourself in a way so that when you are actually successful, you can enjoy that success, right? And the way that you do that is by bringing in saintly qualities together with great qualities of being successful. And then finally, what I covered in the last few slides, just to generate some curiosity in your minds, is how to link your mind to your true master. And for that, you need to have some level of understanding of who the true master is. And it's not going to happen in one talk, and not even in month. Like, it will require lots of practice. And with practice, you will slowly develop intuition around it. So before I actually go into and lead you into a meditation, let me pause there and see if you have any questions.
Hey Yogesh, good talk. I think practice is very important. And like we read any book, right? We realize that, hey, this is a good thing. But
Yes,
if we don't kind of practice, we just quickly forget.
that's
So
true.
any advice on how to practice effectively?
Yeah, so Darshan, the first thing I'll say is you have to have just like at workplace in product management, it's all about prioritization. You have to give it the right priority in your life, right? The truth is, as you say, when somebody, let's say there is a death in family, we go to a cremation ground, and for a couple of days we feel bad, and then we go back to our normal activities. But what we have to do is, if you prioritize and you say, I'm going to set aside some time where it's my time for like befriending my mind. And if you do that, then slowly what you will find is those type of events are not just one-time events anymore. You will feel more compassion towards things of that nature, right? So for my standpoint, the biggest thing is prioritization. The second thing that I will highlight is some level of reading of this nature, because what the reading does is it keeps your mind connected to these ideas. Otherwise, when Monday comes and when we go to work, it can consume us. So you need to, when it's not enough to just meditate or do the meditation, needs to be combined with a way of living, with those doing those noble activities, with some good reading. When you do that, then what you will find is you are actually spiritualizing your secular activities, and your daily secular activities becomes a way for you to spiritually progress on this path.
Thanks. Yep, makes sense.
Okay, since we have about 12 minutes, let me lead you into a little meditation, but I want to give you some guidance before that. So the way we will meditate is, I will have a prelude to it where I'll guide you through it, but once you actually are in that, it will be about 3 minutes. When you are in the 3-minute meditation, I want you to mentally recite Om, but I want to explain to you what I mean by that. So I can say Om in 3 ways, right? I can say it loud, Om. That's one way. or I can just move my lips and say Om. And the third is I don't even move my lips and I just mentally say Om. And the way I did it mentally is when I was breathing out, I started my recitation of Om. And then basically once I had my breath in, when I was breathing out again, I started my next recital. So when I finally when I guide you to the meditation at some point, when I say like, let's get into the meditation, then this is what I would like you to do. So with that, let me guide you through the process. So please sit comfortably in your chairs. Ideally, you can put your palms on your laps. Keep your back erect. Close your eyes lightly, like so they are lightly resting, not too strong. And then I want to first guide you through a relaxation exercise. Start by feeling your toes, like feel the energy from Mother Earth coming through your toes into your body. And feel this energy moving up your feet and your ankles. Let this energy move into your lower legs. Feel it moving into your knees, into your upper legs, into the entire area that might be touching the chair. And feel this energy in your back, in your entire back. Now feel this energy coming into your abdominal muscles, the chest area, and your shoulders. And feel the relaxing effect it may have on your shoulders. Let this energy move into your arms, into your wrist area, into your palms, into your fingers, into your fingertips. Feel the energy in your neck muscles. Let this energy move into your facial muscles. Feel it in your forehead, in your eyes, in your lips, in your earlobes, and finally at the top of your head. Now gradually bring your attention to your spiritual heart, the place where you pointed to when I said who you are. We are now going to express our gratitude towards some folks that we are indebted to. Let's first offer our pranams to our parents who have done so much for us and who have helped us be who we are today. Let's also offer our pranams to our own teachers and all the great saints of the world. May they inspire us with love for the truth. Let's now offer our pranams to that inner dweller in our hearts. May he guide our understanding and enlighten our consciousness. May he take our egoism and pride, calm our turbulent mind, enlarge our love and our compassion for all fellow beings. With the mind thus concentrated at your heart, let's get into our meditation with the recital of Om. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. You can slowly come out of your meditation. I have 3-4 minutes in case there are additional questions I can answer. If you have questions on the meditation also, I can answer.
So Yogesh, I have a question. You said to keep following it in day-to-day life, we should keep revising our reading. Can
Yes.
you recommend a couple of books?
Yes, it depends on what you like to read. First of all, I would say that anything that is positive is good, but the best book I can recommend is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. It's essentially when Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he used to speak to Swami Vivekananda and his disciples, those conversations are recorded almost like a diary, and it's spiritually very uplifting. So that is one book I would recommend. Now, if you can read something, if you like Swami Vivekananda reading, then he has 4 great books: one on Bhakti Yoga, one on Jnana Yoga, one on Karma Yoga, and one on Raja Yoga. So you could, like, I would highly recommend reading his Karma Yoga book. But start with something simple. You can even read things like Amar Chitra Katha with kids. That is very good. So something that is uplifting in nature, that you won't find just as an intellectual reading. You should enjoy that reading. That's what I would recommend. Any other questions? Nobody asked me this question, and I forgot to give you this advice before the meditation. During meditation, if you pursue this approach, if you find your thoughts wandering, do not worry about it. What you can do is just in a very subtle manner, remind yourself that the object of your meditation in this particular scenario was listening to your own mental recitation of Om, right? Just that will give you a lot of concentration, just listening to your own mental recitation. So when your thoughts wander, you just in a very subtle way bring it back there, but do not worry about what is happening, what thoughts are coming, and whether your meditation is good or bad, because that will actually make you progress less on your meditation, right? You need to leave that part out. If there are no further questions, we can end here. Thank you so much. Namaskar, everyone.
Thank you very much, Yogesh. This was very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yogesh.
Thank you.